This is Donald Parham of the LA Chargers, and you're listening to Chargers Unleashed, part of the LA Football Network. Stay jiggy.
Welcome to Chargers Unleashed. Dan Wilkenstein and Ryan Dyrud here from the LA Football Network. This episode is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy Sports, Mint Mobile, Aura, Athletic Greens, and Rock Solid Sports Memorabilia. If this is your first time tuning in, be sure to hit that like and subscribe. You can find us on YouTube, Instagram, X, and also on ESPN Radio 1090 AM every Friday. ESPN, welcome. Shout out to you. Ryan Dyrud filling in for one Jake Hefner. Ryan, you are full on in holiday season. Thanks for joining. Hopping on, my friend. How are you?
My man, what is up? Been on there a few times with Jake, not with you lately. We've missed each other. It's been a crazy season. It's been a fun season. I mean, not necessarily fun for Chargers fans, but in just football in general. It's been fun. We're going to get into all of it. But yeah, great seeing you. I thought you were rocking a Nuggets hat at first, but then I see it's a dope kind of throwback Chargers hat. But yeah, happy to be here.
Honestly, the hat reminds me of a combination of Chargers, Nuggets, and Warriors. And they have like a Warriors color one as well. That I'm like, my wife literally, I came home with it. She's like, is that oh, no, that's not a Warriors hat. But yeah, this new one is sick. So I'm all about it. You mentioned it. Chargers season has been a roller coaster, to say the least.
What's new?
Pivotal matchup between the Chargers and the Denver Broncos, a team that you know very well. Playoff implications on the line. Storylines galore. There's drama in this one. There's a history with some of these players and obviously some of the coaches on the coaching staff. We're going to get into all of that. But Ryan, before we get to that 5,000 foot view for you, what does this game bring to the fans of both teams?
What does it bring in terms of like season output or just like,
because
3 hours on Sunday?
3 hours on Sunday, because I think a lot of people are looking at this, and I'll speak for Chargers fans, and you probably know this, and also Broncos fans too, but I've said it a few times, like, don't let the Chargers team win this game on Sunday, because X or Twitter or socials is going to go into absolute mayhem, because they're going to have, and I apologize for Jake not being here, but you'll have like the pessimist side of fandom that is saying like, great. Now we got worse draft picks, and I wish we would, that versus we're going to the playoffs, baby. Like, that's the mayhem that's going to be coming in this 3 hours in post game. But like for both teams, playoff implications, you got drama. Like, I'm seeing this as a huge, huge game. But there are some people who say, it's not that big a deal. It's just kind of kicking that can down the road until the inevitable. What do you say?
Yeah, well, I mean, it basically, based on stuff we've heard and just common sense tells you that, barring the Chargers making the playoffs, which I think many would still want to see them make a change if they make the playoffs, but barring winning out, making the playoffs, maybe winning a playoff game, you think Brandon Staley and the staff is probably done. So this game specifically, if they lose this game, I would say they're pretty much done at 8 losses. You maybe sneak in at 9-8 if you win in, but probably done. They win, obviously, you're at 6-7. If you get to 10-7 like they did last year and made the playoffs, you never know what can happen when you get to the dance. So in terms of your question, I think this game is kind of is the season over, or is there still a glimmer of hope in the hopeful side of fans? Like you said, the pessimists are going to be pessimists no matter what and be probably angry with the win. But it's kind of like that. Season goes on, or the season is ultimately over at 5:00 on Sunday.
I've said this a few times, Ryan. I said this to Jake. I've said this kind of all season. Is like there's some sort of peace in my opinion, anyways, knowing that one way or another, like this team is going down the tracks on like a train tracks, right? And it's going to go one way or another. It's either going to go really good, or it's going to go really bad. There is no in between, in my opinion. And you're either going to see crazy wholesale changes, or Music City Miracle. You'll have parade, you name it. I don't see any other option. And there's peace, in my opinion, that like regardless, like the train's going down the tracks, and like right now it's at a crossroads, and it could either continue up maybe we got a chance, or steep decline. And I think that's what this game brings, is like at the end of the crossroads, it's going to go one way or the other. But momentum's a thing, and you beat a rival team in division, the one that's ahead of you in the playoff standings, one with the history, which we'll get into. I think that says something. And you've heard kind of reports of some guys getting healthier. So we'll talk about all of that. We'll talk about like predictions. We'll talk about bold predictions, kind of the matchups on offense and defense, the coaches as well, the history. But before we get to that, Ryan, let's talk about our friends over at Mint Mobile. We'll be back in roughly 40 seconds to talk all things Broncos Chargers Week 14 matchup.
If you've ever thought, why in the world is my wireless bill so damn high? Then let me tell you about our friends over at Mint Mobile who we're partnering with for today's video. Mint Mobile offers premium wireless for as low as $15 a month, and you don't have to sacrifice any coverage, speed, or data. They're built on the nation's largest 5G network, so they keep costs low by selling directly to you online. They cut out the retail stores and the salespeople. All Mint Mobile plans include unlimited nationwide talk and text, plus lightning fast 5G and free mobile hotspot. So why should you have to pay for more than you have to access the same network? It only takes 15 minutes to switch, and you'll be paying as low as $15 a month for your phone plan. It really is that simple. So use the link in the description below. Try mintmobile.com/Chargers Unleashed to get started. Click the link in the description below or scan the QR code.
Ryan, I don't know about you, but wireless bills are getting more and more and more expensive by the month, and you're seeing all these hidden charges. Big Wireless wants you to think that they're the only option. Don't be duped. Now through January 1st, you'll receive an additional 3 months free if you purchase a 3-month plan using our link trymintmobile.com/Chargers Unleashed. It's also in our description. The offer is available on all plans, including unlimited. Again, go to trymintmobile.com/Chargers Unleashed. Get premium wireless for as low as $15 a month. Buy 3 months, get 3 months free through January 1st, 2024.
Mm-hmm.
Ryan.
Good stuff. Yeah.
Where do you want to start? Chargers offense versus Broncos defense? The alternative or like the drama going into this?
Let me ask you this first. I don't know if this is what you're talking about with drama. Maybe it's completely different, but I think it's a fun starting point. Last year, before the season, the hot name on the list for the Chargers to get as head coach was Sean Payton. Everyone wanted Brandon Staley out. Go get Sean Payton from the Fox booth, bring him in. Obviously, the Chargers decided to stick with Brandon Staley, and the Broncos lured Sean Payton with a first-round pick and a very lucrative salary that, who's to say the Spanos family would have even paid that. The season started for the Broncos 1-5. You had a lot of fans saying, well, we dodged that bullet, and now all of a sudden you've had the Broncos. They won 5 straight. They just lost last week to Houston in a tough battle, but I think it's safe to say the trajectory of the Broncos franchise is on a very upward trend, and the Chargers, as it is right now, are on a downward trend. So maybe we're talking too much in the past, but for you, Dan Wolkenstein, are you bummed that the Chargers missed on Sean Payton, or you're more excited about future changes and what's to come?
No, I'm not. And, time is a fickle thing, and it's all dependent on when you snap the line. For example, if you snap the line when it was week 6, you would say Sean Payton failure. Then fast forward 6 weeks. Oh my goodness. Failure on the Chargers part. Snap the line. We're at that point again. So if you even those two out, I think there's probably some truth in the middle of it. Say what you will about Sean Payton. I think is 5-6 or 6-6 for that team. I think, what are they? Are they 6-6?
6-6.
No.
Yeah.
6. Yeah. That's not a success with that roster. I'm sorry, it's not. And they've dealt with injuries. They've dealt with things, but are they on an uphill trajectory right now? They just lost, but overall, yes. The Chargers just won. So it's kind of like a reverse of these two roles. I don't necessarily think that would the Spanos team, to your point, would the Spanos group pay that? 2, look what they had to pay, and would losing a first-round draft pick right now help what the Chargers are going through, roster construction-wise? That's critical. So I don't think the Chargers had an option to do that, given the contracts, given kind of the roster and how it's made up right now. Now, you could argue long-term, how it's set up. Would the Chargers be better off with Sean Payton for the next 3 years or Brandon Staley? I honestly don't know. I don't know. It's something where it's hard for first-time head coaches to succeed. That doesn't happen often. And the Chargers have gone through that many times. Sean Payton, obviously, is not a first-time head coach. He's had experience. Brandon Staley right now is now 3 years in. What's to say another new head coach is going to be any better? And say what you will about some of the issues on the defense, or many issues on defense, which some of it is Brandon Staley's blame for roster construction or for personnel decisions and who is not coming. Some of it could be, scheme, whatever. There are things that he's done poorly and he takes blame for, but there are also things that he has done very well for this team and is kind of lost throughout all of the heat that the team's been under. So I don't know to answer that question. Like, it's complicated, but I think the drama, in my opinion, is like one side, it's the Sean Payton, kind of all the stuff that he did, which personally you've heard Matt Money Smith talk about kind of how he felt about what he did, kind of vying for a job that really wasn't there last season in the media, going for the Chargers job when the Chargers job wasn't there. And, I thought that was kind of weird. And then you have the Sean Payton versus Brandon Staley aspect. You have the Joe Lombardi, who was let go by Brandon Staley because of the offensive performance last year. And then Kellen Moore versus Joe Lombardi, of like, which one is better? Are they any different type of thing? And then you have the AFC West division rival. You have playoff implications. Like, there's so much to this. And I think what's important for Chargers fans to understand, or to at least acknowledge, is like there's nuance to all of this, and there is no one person to blame or one person who should take all the praise. It's a collective effort, good or bad. And right now, Chargers have an opportunity to have 2-game win streak. I think currently their playoff chances are 10% right now. I've seen crazier things happen, I'll say that. But you look at kind of the playoff picture in total for the AFC, like, it is bruised and tattered, and that's like an understatement. I'm being kind. The quarterbacks of these AFC teams that are in the playoffs right now, are vying for playoffs. Not many of them are starters.
Yeah.
Go look at the playoff picture, and you tell me which teams they'd rather see than over the Chargers if they can somehow get in with Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert would probably be, other than maybe Tua and Mahomes, like, there's a conversation about those three. Otherwise, there's no better quarterback. Josh Allen, maybe. But that four, that's it. Everyone else, Lamar Jackson, another one. But like the wild card specifically is what I'm referring to.
Yeah.
So
I mean, that young kid down in Houston's playing pretty good too.
True. But he's vying to even try to get into the playoffs. Like he just lost
3 games on the Chargers.
It's true. I mean, but
yeah, that's a huge loss. That's your boy.
And that's my guy. That's my guy. So let's get to this. So
one thing to add real quick, Dan, if you don't mind, before we get more into this specific game. I still think the way this season's gone, it's time to probably make a change. And I think I think wholesale changes.
How high up the totem pole? So there's head coach, or let's say coordinators. We already know the personnel stuff, but like coordinators, head coach, GM, VP, or president, owner.
Well, president is also one of the owner's sons. So I don't think that's changing, right? So you can't go that high, but I think from GM all the way down, from Tom Telesco down. Obviously there's been coaching issues and deficiencies for all 3 of these years and certain things. I think me and you have probably been the most supportive and bullish of Staley and the staff overall. And I think we can see the big picture and, like you said, nuance in different situations and how, he is the head coach, so he shoulders all the blame, but there's a lot of other aspects that go into it. I've started now to look at more Tom Telesco and how he has done things. And I would argue that I think he is probably more to blame for some of these inefficiencies. And here's kind of an example. And I'm going to compare this to the Broncos, since that's the team they're playing this week. And they're, the situation they're in terms of record and whatever is similar. When you look at now George Payton, the GM of the Broncos, and they have this new ownership group that just came in last year, they have pivoted now 3 different ways in less than 3 years. When you look at coaching changes, when you look at quarterback changes, when you look at coordinators, all these different things, they've tried something, switched it up, changed it up. For the 9 years that Telesco has been here, it's basically been all chalk. It's 1 through 7 rounds in the draft. We'll go get maybe one premier free agent. We'll fill some holes here and there. I'm not saying he's a terrible GM, but he's never like pivoted on any of his changing things. And you said a really interesting thing, and I'm not saying you're wrong, but you said last year when Sean Payton was available, the Chargers couldn't have given up a first round pick because of holes they needed to fill, this or that. The Broncos had already given up 2 first round picks to go get Russell Wilson.
Fair.
They made a trade, traded Bradley Chubb, a rising star, to get a first round pick back, then use that first round pick to go get Sean Payton. So Tom Telesco just hasn't been creative enough to do things to go all in on this roster. There's that all in phrase we've used a lot. And yes, they've spent some money. Yes, they've gone and got some premier, free agents when you look at Khalil Mack, and they've signed Corey Linsley. And
Khalil Mack was probably the one thing that he has pivoted in terms of like trying something new, trade premium capital for premium talent. That was the one. And look what it's done. The guy's leading.
And that's been a great pivot. That's been a great pivot. But it's like he's too much relied on not recognizing when a mistake has either been made or not willing to correct that mistake quicker. Instead of it's almost been a look in the mirror moment between ownership and Tom Telesco, right? Like the ownership, the big thing is they hire a coach. They're not going to fire him until the contract runs out, whether it's too cheap, whatever you want to argue, they run it out. Telesco's been the same way, whether it's a draft pick or a trade, barring JC Jackson this year. Basically, it's like, well, we're not going to re-sign it, but we'll just kind of let the contract ride out and then just
tail off in the sunset. Yeah.
Tail off. Exactly. So let's get to the game, but that was just one other thought that it's like, as an organization, the Chargers in these 9 years with Telesco have, outside of firing Anthony Lynn and then getting Brandon Staley, there's been no pivots. Where this Broncos in 3 years have pivoted a lot. True. And that's, I think,
no organizational pivots that have been able to change a trajectory. And I think that's the frustration about like not having the ability to give up a first round draft pick because of the lack of pivots, if you will, or lack of change from Telesco, or if you want to call John Spanos, whoever makes the decisions of personnel and draft, they have not changed things and have followed the same suit. You fast forward, and now you're looking at a team, and Jake and I just started the discussion of like the enigma that is a 2024 roster construction of this team. And it is brutal to look at what this team looks like next year, both from a personnel perspective and salary cap. And so as much as people want to blame Brandon Staley, and again, he's a head coach, he shoulders it and he'll be the one to take the fall. It falls on the sword. That stuff's been happening well before he got here. Before.
Well, Dan, so I know Chargers fans don't want to hear this, but there is no reason this Chargers roster going into 24 should be in worse shape than the team across town in the Los Angeles Rams. Based on what the Rams have done with all their crazy deals.
How many rookies / undrafted free agents or undrafted rookies, were on their roster to start the season? It was like 30 something.
30,
it was insane.
39.
And look where they're at.
And they're a 6-6 better football team.
And so, okay, I know we're kind of going off to Wendy's here a bit, but I think it is an important conversation.
Yeah.
Fundamentally, what is the reason, in your opinion, that the Rams have performed arguably better in our better contention than the Chargers this year? Like, I have my opinion, but I want to hear yours first.
Okay, so mine, 2 things. One, and I still believe Kellen Moore can be a really good offensive play caller. So I don't want people to come at me with pitchforks and say he's terrible. But I'd be hard pressed for anyone to prove that he's better than Sean McVay. Sean McVay is just a better offensive mind in my mind so far. He's more proven, and some of the things they've done. And Rams fans will be frustrated with some games, and we've talked about it on our Rams show all the time. Like there's sometimes that McVay gets away from doing things that work, and that's frustrating. But overall, when you look at his game plan, his strategy, what Matthew Stafford's been able to do, I think that's one big difference. And that's part of the reason why, which I'm sure we'll talk about here later in the show, why the Chargers offense has been struggling this year and is fundamentally, or at least statistically, actually worse this year than last year, which is pretty wild. 2, they drafted really well this year. You look at their first round pick, Steve Avila, or I guess second round pick, Steve Avila, absolute home run on the offensive line. Kobe Turner at the defensive line was a 3rd round pick, home run. Byron Young, 3rd round pick, home run. Puka Nacua, I don't even want to. I don't want to
the biggest home run you can have.
I don't want to trigger Chargers fans right now, but the Chargers took 2 receivers before Puka Nacua. And not only does Puka Nacua have quadruple their stats, he's leading the entire NFL rookie class in stats.
Yep.
So that's 3. They nailed their, or that's 2. They nailed their offensive line. 3 is, I think, player buy-in to culture and coaching mentality. And I think this is the biggest one. And I think the Chargers and Brandon Staley did a really good job in year 1 of recreating the culture and getting the player buy-in. Year 2, they got pummeled with injuries. To me, last year was a coach of the year type year for Brandon Staley, making the playoffs at 10-7 based on what they were up against. But for whatever reason this year, it seems like there is a big disconnect between what the coaches are wanting to do and what the players are wanting to do. And there just hasn't been that buyout. And when you have guys like Dean Leonard and other guys that are outperforming big name secondary players, that tells you the guys that aren't expected to play a lot are buying in, and the guys that are not buying in, and that's why they're underperforming.
Now, you can argue, what is the issue? Is it not buying in, or just not having it? Like, they're just not those dudes. Like, who knows? Because, for example, like Michael Davis, $9 million on the books, and he has not been anything like he was last year. Now, again, in context, go look at the games that he was playing against poor teams for a 5-6 week stretch. Like, that probably inflated how good people thought of him. But it's tough. It's tough to argue against the lack of buy-in, and it's tough to argue against like the draft stuff, because at the end of the day, like, the Chargers team, they got a whole bunch of guys that are injured that are making top dollar, which is, that happens sometimes. But like, the guys behind them, they just haven't stepped up, period.
Yeah.
So
well, here's another example.
Real quick. I know we're coming up to it for ESPN Radio. If you guys are still on ESPN Radio and you're just going to tune in, please check us out on LAFB, as well as Chargers Unleashed on YouTube, anywhere you get your podcasts. Sorry, continue.
Yeah, sorry, just and bringing it back to this game. So to the Broncos, at 1-5, Dan, this, obviously, they were not just the worst defense in 2023, they were a historically bad defense. I mean,
70 points.
70 points. The Dolphins, they were giving up, their rush defense was giving up 50 yards more per game than the 31st worst rush defense. They were a historically bad run defense. They didn't fire
which Ryan shows, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but it shows how good it's been over the last 4 or 5 games, because while the rush defense of the Broncos is still last by 10 yards over the next worst, they had to climb that big of a hill to get to just 10 yards worse.
Yes, it was a large hill to climb. So, and that's why people need to look at week to week and not just the whole season, because it doesn't tell the whole story. But anyway, I was getting, so historically bad, not just bad, historically bad. Didn't fire the DC Vance Joseph, didn't make any wholesale changes outside of getting rid of some big name veterans, and they went with younger guys. Remember, they got rid of some big name edge rushers that they had, just Randy Gregory, they just signed a year prior, another pivot that they made, right? They signed him to a $15 million per year contract, ate some of his contract to get him out of there because it wasn't working out in the locker room. That was a pivot they made. Justin Simmons, after they beat the Minnesota Vikings on primetime, was asked, like, what changed with this defense? Like, you're now since week 6, you're one of the better defenses, obviously all the turnovers. What changed? Was it scheme? Was it this? Because we talk, not just me and you, but in Chargers land, we talk all the time about scheme and all this stuff. And that goes into it. I'm not saying it doesn't. Justin Simmons says, we didn't change a single thing in terms of what we were doing in practice, our scheme. We just believed in the system, believed in each other, and made sure that we did our job and didn't overthink and try to do other jobs. All of a sudden, not only do they win 5 games in a row, they're one of the better defenses in football, and they're playing with guys like, McLaughlin, who's an undrafted free agent in the secondary. It's not like they have all these just stars. They have some, obviously, Justin Simmons being one of them. But they have guys like the Chargers that are, yeah. And so the interesting thing, and I know I'm rambling a lot, and this is your show, and I'm taking over, so I'm not trying to. I apologize. But
I like the nuance. This is what's important.
The interesting thing with the Chargers is there's that aspect of it is, okay, why are guys not buying in? Why are they not just doing that little thing and trusting that what the coaches are coaching them will work? But then the other side of it is, as a coach and a teacher, if your guys are not buying in and seemingly every week it's not working, then it's time for you to change your style, your practice schedule, your scheme, whatever it may be,
Totally.
to get them to buy in. So that's kind of the hard, whose fault really is it kind of thing.
And that's one area that I do put a ton of blame on the coaching staff. Is it seems like it took way too long to make these pivots as a coaching staff, whether that's how you coach, who you're coaching, who's starting. It seems like that could have been done earlier. Now, maybe it was done at the perfect time and they rattle off 5 wins, they go 10-7, who knows? But I don't think it's a good look for guys like Michael Davis who are being benched for UDFAs and waiver wire pickups, and they are looking much better than you collectively.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, like Brandon Staley's defense and most defenses, especially now in a passing league, like the buck stops in the secondary and their ability to tackle and end a play. And say what you will about Dean Leonard getting beat on some slants and he has tackled and ended a play, and it hasn't gone the distance. And too often this year, one busted coverage, one busted tackle has costed this team multiple victories, like multiple. Go back to the Packers game. Watch what Michael Davis and Asante Samuel Jr. did on that last defensive drive. Go back to the Titans game. Same thing. Like over and over. Go back to the Lions game. Go back to the Dolphins game. Go back to the Vikings game. Like so many of it is that. And so say what you will about them getting beat. They're not getting beat for home runs. They might be getting beat for doubles. And as a defense, that's what you need. You want to extend the drive, make them beat you, go down the field. So now that we're 25 minutes in, Ryan.
Yes.
Chargers offense versus Broncos defense, or vice versa? Where would you like to start?
We've been talking a lot of defense. Let's go Chargers offense versus Broncos defense.
Okay, so Broncos defense. You mentioned how important kind of the shift in mentality and player buy-in and what that meant to this team getting to where they are now. They finally got over the hump. They're 6-6, playoff hunt. Culture seems to have shifted. The run defense still is bad.
Yeah.
Hasn't been as bad as it was before. But Chargers offense, run offense is brutal. And you heard Brandon Staley talk about this week that there's competition, quote unquote, for who possibly is going to get carries and what that role is going to look like. Who knows what's going to happen with his Chargers offense from a passing perspective? Like, I feel like it's a joker at this point. Like, you have no idea what's coming out of that Jack in the Box. And you kind of just got to cross your fingers, hope for the best. Do you see this as a chance for the Chargers running game to get going, given the Broncos defensive struggles on rush defense, or is that maybe not quite what it might look like?
It should be. Will it? I don't know. I mean, like we said, the Broncos rush defense has certainly gotten a lot better. It's still not like great, but it's definitely, against the Browns, they held the Browns, I think, to 80 yards rushing total or something like that in that win. So, it's gotten better. It certainly, though, is not as good as, say, the Jets, who the Chargers have already played, and some of these other defenses, so that they can get it going. The real question is, and this goes back to pivoting too late. Like, are they going to give other opportunities to these backs? Because as much as we all love Austin Eckler, and he'll go down, I think, as one of the great Chargers of all time in the fan base, he hasn't been good this year. I mean, let's just call a spade a spade. He has not been good this year. He's had drops, critical drops out of the backfield, as has all the receiving core, but he usually doesn't do that. He's had many drops. He's not hitting the holes. I mean, I've seen many plays, I'm sure you have, when you look at the all 22 and you have the gap option or the zone option.
It's
he
right
takes
there. It's right there.
Clearly the wrong one. So we can blame play call. We can do all this, but as a back in this system, like, you've got to be able to hit those holes, and he's not hitting them. So can Joshua Kelly get more? Why is Isaiah Spiller not getting more play? Is he really that bad, or is he not understanding the system, or what's going on with that after how highly they've talked about him and how, using a draft pick on him? So to answer your question, I think it's an opportunity. Certainly. I don't think we'll see a whole lot of difference. I think they can certainly have a little bit more success and be in that 100-yard range, but I don't think it's going to be, they're not going to win this game on the running game, because I just don't think they're there yet to commit to it.
Yeah. Yeah. And you look at I think the Broncos, they hang their hat on their secondary. I mean, Justin Simmons, Pat Surtain, I would say arguably both of those guys are top 3 at their position right now. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's an incredible duo. And that's a duo that the Chargers probably wish they had in Derwin James and JC Jackson, and it just didn't work out. Yeah. But that front is pretty good. Like, I don't think Baron Browning gets enough. I think Jonathan Harris got Zach Allen. There's guys there, right? Like,
Yeah.
The defense has gotten better. The Chargers offense, though, like I don't want to say the protection has been bad, but their protection has been bad when it matters most.
Yeah.
And they just haven't been able to execute when it matters most. And that's been like what's plagued them all season.
Yep.
I mean, even in that Patriots game, like it took them until the last drive on one catch from Alex Erickson to ice the game against the Patriots team that is offensively historically bad.
Yeah.
Like they had every single chance to ice that game from the first quarter on, and they never could.
Yep.
And so I think like Chargers offense versus their defense, we don't know what's going to happen with Josh Palmer if he's going to come in. They just opened the window. It's pretty unlikely, in my opinion, that he's going to play this week. And then you got a short week coming up against the Raiders, but they need some consistency and they need some like dependability on this offense. Like you look at the defense, that's what Hussein Bassi, that's what like Dean Leonard has brought them, is like stability and some level of like dependability of the guys being where they're supposed to be. On offense, like you're seeing drops from Donald Parham, drops from Quentin Johnston, drops and fumbles from Austin Eckler and Keenan Allen. You're seeing offensive line getting blown up on the right side sometimes. The running backs are dropping balls, they're not hitting lanes. Like there's only so much Justin Herbert can do. Now, has he been perfect? No, but he's been pretty damn good this last month. And the team really has kind of let him down, especially on offense. And so, like, they got to get right. You can't blame the coaching staff for these guys dropping and fumbling. Like, that's on execution. Like, they learned that from Pee Wee all the way up. Like, how do you, like, at some point, these guys just got to man up. Like, there has to be player accountability. Like, imagine what Gerald Everett is talking to with former tight end Donald Parham. Or, like, imagine Keenan Allen, even with his drops and fumbles, talking to Quentin Johnston. Like, this stuff can't happen. And there's only so much you can coach and scheme up for. If your guys aren't executing, you're not going to win. And so it's now, what, week 14? We've yet to see this offense execute with the defense for a game. And that is just sad.
Yeah.
Like, that's sad. And on the macro, that's a coaching problem. Micro, one game at a time, whatever. But 14 games, again, they have 5 more. We'll see. Any like specific matchups that you're looking forward to? Obviously, you got Pat Surtain versus possibly Keenan Allen. I'm sure they're going to double, triple team him at some point. I'm curious to see how Quentin Johnston lines up in this game, who he lines up with. I would love to see the Chargers just pepper him. Like, go down with your guys.
We've been saying that for 12 weeks. When's it going to happen, right?
Yeah, pepper him and actually give Darius Davis some snaps as a receiver. Like, you got to use who you have. And right now, he is the only guy, other than Quentin, who could get past the defense. Like, let him go down. My specific thing, can we please see like 2 or 3 shot plays down the middle of the field on go routes? I don't want to see sideline stuff where it just goes out of bounds and whatever. Like, give these guys a chance to go get it.
Yep. Yeah. And it's frustrating when you think about where this offense is and like why it hasn't progressed. And there's so like, who do you blame in the blame pie, right? Like, is it the scheme? Is it Herbert? Is it the receivers? Is it the offensive line? And obviously, like most things in life, it's a collective unit that there's, I think, blame to go around, and that's a more systematic, I think, issue and problem that we could dive into much deeper at a different time. In terms of, matchups, obviously Keenan Allen and Pat Surtain, as you mentioned, is going to be a great one. Alex Singleton at the linebacker position for the Broncos is a guy I don't think gets a lot of shine. He's kind of a lesser known guy, but he's been killing it. I mean, he's a tackling machine all over the place. Him and Josie Jewell as backers are 2 backers that really don't get talked about a lot on the national spotlight. But if you want this Chargers running game to get going, it's how are you going to get them out of place and neutralize? Because, I mean, they fill holes quick. So that's going to be kind of an interesting one to see. And, what do these tight ends do? And as you kind of alluded to, are they going to be, because we can say all we want to see Quentin Johnston involved, but for whatever reason, whether it's on him, whether it's on Moore, whether it's on Herbert, it just doesn't happen. It's honestly insane to me how little utilized he is. And most most people, and I get it. I mean, he's your first round pick, but most people are saying it's on him and he's a bust. But when you
Go
really
to the
think,
tape.
I
He's
think
had
it's
drops.
more. Yes, he's had drops.
He's had drops, but up until this past week, which I thought that was the best they've utilized him all season. Up until that week, he has not, even that, I still think they could do more. They just haven't utilized him. They haven't prioritized him. They haven't schemed for him. He has been an afterthought literally all season.
Yeah. And here's a perfect example. And especially when you play a receiver that's contingent on so many things and so many people, and you have to have confidence in yourself. In the middle of October, Puka Nacua led all receivers, not rookies, all receivers in drops. I don't think anyone thinks about that right now. They're like, wow, Puka Nacua is lighting the league on fire. All everyone talks about with Quentin Johnston is drops. But yeah, Puka Nacua across town had way more than him, but the Rams kept peppering the ball, getting his confidence, and now he's leading all rookies and is a dominant fixture in that offense. The Chargers, for whatever reason, again, if it's Herbert, if it's Moore, if it's Quentin, whatever, are just not getting him involved enough to, if it's an issue, then let's see it as an issue. Like, okay, dude had 3 drops today.
Force the issue.
Get him out of here. He's had 4 drops today. He's done. One critical drop when you get one pass, one target. It's like, it shouldn't happen. I'm not giving an excuse. He's a first round pick. Catch the dang ball. But at the same time, like, you got to get him going. It's like a running back that needs carries. It's like a pitcher that needs, warm-up reps. It's like a goalie.
It's a quarterback who throws an interception and then needs to get back out there and throw a pass.
Yeah. Yeah. And you got to do that. So I'd love to see him.
I'm so glad you said that. I'm so glad that's all I've been asking for, man, is like, get the guy reps. Like, let him push through it. Help him push through it. And I don't know, to your point, I don't know if I'm talking to Justin or to Kellen. Yeah. And it seems to me like it's Justin.
Yeah.
And I understand, he wants to go to the guys that are dependable. He wants to go to the guys that are catching. I get all of that, but I don't know if that's the better thing for your team. I don't.
Yeah.
And again, that's why I liked what they did against the Patriots, is they actually peppered him. He had the second most targets in the entire team behind Keenan Allen. And yeah, he had the really bad drop, but that was the most productive game he's had. And I think that's why he was so hard on himself after that drop, was because he was that close to having like that statement of like, all right, we're here. And I wish that the Chargers would go back to him after some of these drops. Like, you saw what happened a few weeks ago. He has the drop and then they kind of go away from him. You saw what happened there. Has a drop, go away from him. Like, go right back the next drive, give him a slant route, see what they can do. I mean, and we're saying all this stuff about this offense against the Broncos defense, but like, the Chargers offense, again, this is supposed to be a top 5 offense we're talking about going into the year. And currently they're 21st in first downs. They're 15th in yards. They're 11th in passing yards, 25th in rushing yards, 26 yards per attempt. That's not good. Like, none of those are good. 11th in points per game.
Mm-hmm.
Like, people want to talk about the defense being the issue, and the defense has been an issue a lot this season. But both sides of the ball have not lived up to expectations, period. And that's been the issue. So flipping Chargers defense versus the Broncos offense. And, the Broncos offense, you say what you will about Russell Wilson, like, say what you will about like what they've been able to do and the win streak and all that kind of stuff. Like, make no mistake about it. Like, that's been because of the defense. Now, Russ has done things well at times. Like, he's scrambled. He has more confidence and all of that. But still, yards, Broncos offense, 24th in the NFL. You look at yards passing, 26th, rushing, 30th. Like, these aren't good. What has helped them has been their field position, starting on, I think, their 31st. Sorry, starting on the 31st, the 31-yard line, 4th best in the NFL. Defense has been balling out. Defense best in turnovers. Like, that's what's helped them.
Yep.
Turnover percentage, second best, third fewest scoring percentage allowed on defense. Like, that's what's brought them there. So, like, the offense, like the Chargers defense, like, while the Broncos offense isn't bad,
it's not good.
It's not good. And the Chargers defense should perform well. Like if they can perform that way against Baltimore, this offense is nothing like Baltimore.
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, they're going to be going against an offense that they ran for 2 years when Joe Lombardi was their coordinator. So they should be kind of knowing the ins and outs of what they do. Now, obviously checks and calls will be different at the line of scrimmage and whatnot. So they're not going to know all that, but they shouldn't be getting anything thrown at them that they haven't seen every single day down in Costa Mesa for 2 years. So they should absolutely have their way with this offense. The Broncos offense in general has been really bad in the red zone. So as long as the Chargers, even if they give up some yards between the 20s, as long as they crunch down in the red zone and holding the field goals. But then it's like, how confident are you the Chargers are going to score touchdowns? So it kind of goes both ways. But in terms of, it's, and I'll say it like this, like it's wild to think that this Chargers offense with who they have, even with the injuries and with the quarterback they have, is really, in terms of points, not a whole lot better than what this Broncos offense is in this first year.
That is such an indictment. That is such an indictment when you look at these teams.
Exactly. So, but defensively, Chargers have played well the last few weeks. This one should be no different.
I mean, looking at like specific players, like obviously Courtland Sutton's a dude. Jerry Jeudy, I think he's had positives and negatives. I think he's had, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he's had a better year this year than what has happened previously. Marvin Mims, I think, is a guy that probably isn't utilized as much as I think he should. He was a guy that I loved going into the draft.
Yeah, like, he's the Quentin Johnston syndrome, just not getting used enough.
My mind kind of goes to like, who are the guys that could beat you with like home run plays? Like obviously Javonte Williams, he's probably the one guy that I think as a Chargers fan, I don't want to see beat me. If I see an over the top or broken tackle thing go wrong and we see house calls from Jeudy or Marvin Mims for 60 plus, I'm going to lose it.
Yeah.
I'm going to lose it. Like that's what's going to break this defense. It's not the bend but don't break. It's the break. And if we see those, that's why Bassie and Leonard have it in there, is because of those breaks where they just give up the whole thing. As long as we don't see those, the Chargers win. I have no doubt in my mind, if there is no broken coverage, if the Chargers just do their job and they make Denver go down the field meticulously, Chargers win. But they have lost almost all of their games because of like one or two massively poorly timed, back-breaking execution mishap.
Yep.
And that's been their game all season.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And the Chargers should win this game, I think. I personally, I don't know if we're doing score predictions yet or what. I don't
Let's
think
do it. It's
will.
been a while. Let's do it. You don't think they will? Ooh, okay. Here we go.
Well, and here's why. If they okay. As you mentioned, the Broncos this year are number one in turnovers, forced turnovers. The Chargers, Justin Herbert doesn't throw a lot of interceptions, but Austin Eckler, they've had trouble fumbling the football. And the Broncos are all about forcing fumbles. So if that rears its ugly head with the Chargers and you see a fumble in the red zone like we saw just recently, or you see a fumble over the middle or ill-timed and the Broncos are able to have that field position, because I don't think the Broncos are going to score a lot of points. It's not like they're going to all of a sudden have this explosion on offense, but if they flip the field and they're able to get a nice couple field goals or get an easy gimme touchdown, that's what they've been living off on this, last 6 weeks. So until the Chargers can prove that they're not going to turn the ball over in critical situations,
that's been the thing that's plagued them the last 2 or 3 games specifically. Because going into those, they were the best in the NFL in turnover margin, and then for whatever reason, the last 2 weeks, not including the Patriots game, that's what cost them the game.
That exactly that flip. So that turnovers, and then as we've kind of talked about, so I'm not going to belabor the point, but for whatever reason, this offense just seems broken. It just doesn't seem like what it should be. Whether that's play calling, whether that's Justin Herbert at the line of scrimmage, not quite being good enough, dissecting the defense before the ball is snapped, whether that's him not wanting to take the big shot. I think he only has we did an article on it today on LAFB Network. I think he only has 2 or 3 passes, not air yards, but 2 or 3 passes of 40 plus yards. Like everyone's talking about explosive plays. They're down fundamentally this year in explosive plays with Kellen Moore. His air yards are on par for what they've been over the last 2 years, but they're way lower than that they were in his first 2 years. So it's just fundamentally this offense just seems broken, and I don't know if they get it fixed this late in the season. So yeah, it should be a good game though. It's an AFC West game. I feel like I sound like I'm all down and gloomy. I don't want to sound like that because I'm usually the optimistic one, but just for whatever reason, just the offense being broken, the defense being inconsistent. It's just, it's hard to really predict what this team will do. And they could come out and ball out like they should have done. I just don't know if they'll do that yet.
Okay, so quickly, as we get out of here, do you see either of these teams as a playoff team? Fast forward to January.
I don't see. I'll just be honest, and I don't want to be negative. I don't see the Chargers as a playoff team. I just think fundamentally they're not going to win out. I don't think. And I think they would need to win out.
Change. Yeah, a whole lot.
I think they need to win out. If the Broncos win this game, I think they will make the playoffs. If they lose, if the Chargers do win and the Broncos lose, then I think both teams miss the playoffs. If that answers your question.
It does. Look, like we said, there are so many storylines in, the slice of pie of the blame can go so many different directions. And honestly, that's been the case for both teams. And while they are kind of facing different trajectories now, this is another kind of inflection point on the season. And I feel like you can kind of, people talk about it in quarters, and it feels like for these two teams specifically, it's like thirds, like the first third, second third. We're in the home stretch here, and ugly wins doesn't matter. Like you just take the win. And right now, this Chargers team and the Broncos team, for that matter, they're looking to win in December. And the Chargers got one. Broncos don't have any right now. That's going to be the season and arguably the career for at least the Chargers coaching staff and probably general manager between now and January. Anything else? Any other kind of big picture or specifics that you want folks to pay attention to or call out before we get out of here?
No, I think we hit a lot of good stuff. It was fun chatting with you about that. I haven't really get the opportunity, and every now and then, I'll jump on Twitter or whatever and gets fun interact. I mean, Chargers fans, man, are the best for engagement. There's no fan base more engaging on Twitter.
Engaging, they are the best. Engaging, they are the best. How they engage, different story.
Yes, but hey, I love it. So I think it's great. It'll be interesting. I really, last thing I'll add, I really want to see Justin Herbert play elite football down the stretch. And I don't want that to come out wrong, because I know if you say anything bad about Justin Herbert, the pitchforks come out for you. But I think there's stuff that he could improve in his own game. And I'm sure he would admit that. And I kind of alluded to it earlier. And, pre-snap, I think he hasn't been great pre-snap and dissecting the defense. When we talk about end of game, not production, end of game, execution, a lot of that is, for instance, the Baltimore game, right? It was a cover zero. You knew they were bringing the house. You can't do a 7-step drop and expect to have time to hit the open receiver. It's got to be quick, and that's got to be decisive and decided pre-snap. And I don't think he's doing enough of that. I'm not saying he's bad. I'm not saying it's all his fault for these woes. But in those moments, when the defense is bringing the heat and the defense knows that you're probably going to falter under the pressure or your offensive line isn't going to have enough guys to man it, you have to make that decision. That was a big thing with Jared Goff and his development. When he against cover zero blitzes, for whatever reason, he could not get the ball out quick. And so that's just one example. So I want to see Justin Herbert in that maturation process. I'd love to see him play elite football at the line of scrimmage pre-snap, because that's the next step of his game. We know he can make all the throws. It's deciding pre-snap where the ball goes and how to get it out quick, so you're not taking those back-breaking sacks.
It's unfortunate. And I think a lot of Chargers fans kind of come to Justin Herbert's defense, because it's unfortunate that it always comes down to those moments. And
of course,
Justin Herbert could be playing so well, and offense, defense, whoever lets him down all game. And then finally, at the end of the game, when he's been playing lights out all day, he misses a coverage or read or misses an audible, obviously no Corey Linsley is where that is impacted most. And that's what it's remembered by. And I also want to see, if Justin Herbert just plays the way he's played the last month and the offense just plays that way with him, they're golden. But they simply haven't. And it's sad. Jake and I have talked about this all season. It is laughable, and I laugh so don't cry, how much we have lacked any sort of complimentary football all season. Even look at the wins. Go back to the Bears win, or go back to the Patriots win, or go back to the win again. all of these wins, even like the Jets won, like the defense did everything. Offense was terrible. You look at the Bears game, the points look like it's an offense. That was the defense that did that. There really hasn't been a game where both sides of the ball have played well for more than a half at best. And I'll even give that a stretch. That's what I want to see. Like, can we just have one game? And it'd be nice to do it against a division rival. Like, you can make things interesting. And this game is all about giving yourself an opportunity to play another meaningful game. You lose, that's basically out the window. And I mentioned the top, like, momentum's a fickle thing. And you win against a division rival, short week against the Raiders. Those two becoming wins and you're 7-7. Folks are scared. Yeah. I'm telling you, external folks are scared, and they would rather play the teams that have backup quarterbacks than the Chargers, regardless of what's gone on with the defense, regardless of the coaching issue. They would rather see the Chargers not in the playoffs. So make it interesting, cause mayhem, see where the chips fall. But you got to beat Denver before then. Ryan Dyer, this has been a pleasure, man. I love talking ball with you. You always bring amazing insight, especially knowing the Broncos team and the Rams. I think there's been a lot of insight here. The Puka Nacua stuff, like, hats off to you. I just want to see the Chargers do right by Quentin. Like, if he's a bust, he's a bust, but let us prove that he's a bust or let him grow out of it. We'll see. Yeah. Until then, Keenan
Allen has more drops than Quentin Johnston. Just throwing that out there too. So
this year?
Yeah.
Jeez. He probably also has like 500 more targets.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Minor detail. But look, Chargers fans, be sure to stay at halftime. Antonio Gates going into the Chargers Hall of Fame on Sunday. I'll be there. One of the GOATs. We have a giveaway going on right now. Go to LAC_Unleashed on X, and you can see the pinned tweet. Be sure to enter for that giveaway a signed, inscribed, custom Antonio Gates jersey. All-decade team player. Until then, for Ryan Dyer, Jake Hefner, with us in spirit, Dan Wilkinson, LAFB, Chargers Unleashed. We'll talk to you next time.